It was the day humanity had feared for years, the day the aliens arrived. Across the globe, cities were struck by an eerie silence as the massive alien ships hovered above. These ships were unlike anything humanity had ever seen, sleek and powerful, with glowing lights that cast strange shadows over the earth. People stared up at the sky in awe and fear, unsure of what was coming next. In the heart of New York City, the crowd gathered in the streets. Some ran, some stood frozen, and some simply looked up, waiting for something to happen. The air was thick with tension. And then, they heard it, a voice, cold and commanding, coming from the largest ship overhead. "Humans," the voice boomed, echoing across the city. "You are weak. You are nothing. Kneel before me and accept your place as slaves to the HFY Empire. This is your only chance. Kneel or perish." The people around Michael, a soldier who had spent most of his life preparing for moments like this, began to tremble. It was true. Earth had never faced an enemy like this. The HFY were a race of conquerors, known across the galaxy for their cruelty. No one had ever resisted them before. No one had dared. But Michael was different. Standing tall, his military training kicking in, he felt no fear. He had prepared for this moment all his life, knowing that one day, humanity might have to fight for its survival. As the voice from the alien ship continued to speak, demanding submission, Michael's heart beat steadily. He wasn't afraid. A few people around him dropped to their knees, terror seizing them. They were ready to surrender. But Michael's thoughts were clear, his mind sharp. He wasn't like them. He wasn't going to give up without a fight. He had seen what happened to worlds that surrendered. They were erased, their people enslaved, their history wiped clean. He would not let that happen to Earth. "Do not kneel," Michael muttered under his breath, but loud enough for those around him to hear. He looked at the people nearest him, his voice steady and firm. "We fight. We fight for freedom, for our homes. If we give in now, we're lost forever." His words, simple but strong, spread quickly through the crowd. A few others stood with him, refusing to bow their heads. They were not ready to surrender. They would not kneel before their oppressors. Up above, Syra, the leader of the HFY invasion force, watched. She had been observing Earth for months, studying its people, waiting for the right time to strike. From her command center aboard the ship, she smiled at the chaos below. She believed that humanity would fall without a fight. She had seen it happen to other planets, and she expected no different here. But what Syra didn't know, as she looked down at Michael's defiant figure, was that he wasn't afraid. He had been waiting for this moment, and when the time came, he would show the HFY just how dangerous humans could be. The voice from the alien ship echoed through the streets of New York, commanding people to kneel. Its tone was harsh, unyielding. "Kneel before me, humans, and accept your fate. This is the only choice you have. Kneel now or face extinction." Michael stood still, his feet planted firmly on the ground. Around him, the crowd shifted uneasily. Some were already on their knees, their eyes filled with fear. They didn't know what to do. The sight of the massive alien ships above them was enough to break their will. But Michael didn't feel the same. He had been trained for moments like this. His entire life had prepared him for a day when Earth would face its greatest threat. He wasn't afraid. Fear was something he had learned to control a long time ago. As he stood there, looking at the alien ships overhead, Michael's thoughts raced. The HFY think they can conquer us easily. They think they can break us with one command. But they don't know us. They don't know what it means to be human. He turned his head slightly, scanning the faces of the people around him. Some were still standing, but most had dropped to their knees, their hands pressed against the ground in submission. Their eyes were filled with dread. It was a hopeless scene, one that made Michael's blood boil. "We can't let this happen. Not now. Not ever." His mind was clear, and his resolve grew stronger. Michael was not a hero by choice. He was a soldier, trained to do whatever it took to protect his people. But now he saw that this wasn't just about him. This was about humanity itself. With a deep breath, Michael turned his attention back to the alien ship, which loomed above him like a dark shadow. He had to act now. There was no room for hesitation. The voice from the ship boomed again, louder this time, more commanding. "I will not repeat myself. Kneel before the Aether, or your world will be destroyed." But Michael didn't kneel. He stood taller, his chest puffed out with defiance. He knew this was the moment that could change everything. The moment that would show the aliens they had made a mistake. "You're wrong," Michael said aloud, his voice carrying through the street. He wasn't shouting, but there was a fire in his words. "We will never kneel. Not to you. Not to anyone." His words struck a chord with the few who had remained standing. They looked up at him, uncertainty in their eyes, but something else too. A spark of hope. A glimmer of rebellion. "Michael's right," shouted one man nearby. His voice was shaky, but the words were clear. "We won't give up. We're not weak." A few others joined in, slowly but surely. The murmurs of resistance grew louder. The people who had once knelt now stood, hesitant at first, but gradually more confident. They were still afraid, but they were no longer willing to surrender without a fight. Above them, Syra's eyes narrowed as she watched the scene unfold. Her expression, once filled with amusement, now showed confusion. This was not what she had expected. Humans were supposed to be weak, easy to control. They were supposed to fear her. But instead, they were standing up, one by one, defying her. Syra's fingers curled into a fist. This was not supposed to happen. Michael could feel her anger even from the ground, but he didn't care. He had made his decision, and now he would stand by it, no matter the cost. The moment of defiance had begun, and it was only the beginning. As the crowd in New York began to stir with newfound defiance, the massive alien ships continued to hover above. Syra watched it all unfold from her command center aboard the lead ship. The planet below her, which she had believed to be an easy conquest, was now reacting in ways she hadn't expected. She had studied humanity for months, observing their behavior, their culture. She knew they were weak, divided, fractured, and primitive compared to the Aether. They should have been trembling with fear, begging for mercy. Instead, they stood up, defiant, and ready to resist. Syra's brow furrowed. She couldn't understand it. The humans were supposed to kneel, as all other races had done before them. The Aether had conquered planet after planet, each one falling without much effort. But this human, Michael, standing tall amidst the chaos, was different. He refused to submit. He stood as if the alien ships above him were nothing more than a passing storm. This was a mistake, Syra thought, her mind racing. I underestimated them. She had expected humanity to fall easily. It was the pattern. But this was not following the pattern. Humans were supposed to be quick to panic, easy to break. Instead, they were showing something Syra hadn't seen in any other species: unity, defiance, and courage. From the view of her command center, Syra could see the ripple effect of Michael's actions. Around the world, human resistance was growing. Small groups, at first hesitant, now rallied together. They were sabotaging alien equipment, disabling communication networks, and even taking down Aether drones. What had started as a single act of defiance was now spreading like wildfire. Syra clenched her fists. The humans were not supposed to be able to think on their feet like this. Their minds were supposed to be simple, predictable. Instead, they were proving to be far more resourceful and adaptable than she had anticipated. This must be stopped. Syra muttered to herself. She turned to her officers, who were watching her with wide eyes. Prepare the second wave. We will crush their resistance before it spreads any further. Her commanders nodded, and the orders were quickly sent out across the fleet. But even as she spoke the words, doubt lingered in the back of her mind. Could they truly destroy this human spirit? Could they wipe away the defiance that had already taken root? On the ground, Michael and the people around him were preparing for what was to come. They knew the aliens wouldn't give up easily. The Aether had already shown their power, but Michael had seen something in the eyes of the people, something new. They weren't afraid anymore. They had a fire inside them now, and it was spreading fast. Michael could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on him. He had done what he could to inspire the people to rise up, but he knew that words alone wouldn't be enough. Action was needed. They needed to strike back, to show the Aether that humanity wasn't afraid to fight for its survival. As the resistance continued to grow, Cyrus' frustration grew as well. The humans, once thought to be insignificant, were proving to be a serious threat. But Sarah refused to back down. Her people had never known defeat, and she wasn't about to let a primitive race like humanity be the first. The battle for Earth had only just begun, and Sarah, despite her miscalculations, was not about to let it slip away. As the days passed, the resistance continued to grow. What had started as a few brave individuals standing up to the Aether now blossomed into a full-scale movement. Across the world, people were fighting back, using whatever tools and weapons they could find to strike at the alien invaders. Michael could feel the momentum shifting. At first, he had been one of the few who refused to kneel. Now, there were thousands like him, men, women, and children, all standing together, united against their alien oppressors. They weren't just fighting for their lives anymore. They were fighting for their planet, for their way of life, for their future. As he walked through the streets of New York, where the resistance had set up one of their main headquarters, he could see the change in the people. The fear that had once held them in chains was starting to fade, replaced by something stronger: determination, hope, a belief that they could win. Michael stopped in front of a group of fighters gathered around a table, strategizing their next move. They were working quickly, setting up plans to disable more Aether communication towers. Each victory, no matter how small, was a reminder that humanity wasn't as weak as the aliens thought. One of the fighters, a woman named Sarah, looked up at Michael as he approached. "We've done well so far, but we need more. The Aether are hitting back harder now. We're going to need more supplies, more weapons." Michael nodded. "I know, but we've been doing things their way for too long. It's time we change the rules." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" "We've been reacting to them," Michael said, his voice steady. "Now we need to take the fight to them. We need to hit their supply lines, their energy sources. We need to show them that we're not just a bunch of people with guns. We're a force they can't ignore." The group fell silent for a moment, the weight of Michael's words sinking in. Then, one by one, they nodded, determination lighting up their eyes. They were ready to take the fight to the aliens. Elsewhere, Cyrus sat in her command center, staring at the holographic map of Earth. The resistance was growing, and it was no longer just a handful of scattered attacks. Humans were beginning to strike with more precision and coordination. It was unlike anything she had seen before. For the first time since her arrival, Thyra felt a flicker of doubt. These humans, who she had once dismissed as weak and primitive, were proving to be a serious threat. They were resourceful, creative, and adaptable, qualities that made them far more dangerous than she had anticipated. Sarah knew that if the resistance continued to grow, it could be the beginning of the end for her invasion. The Aether had never been faced with an enemy like this before. She had assumed that fear would keep the humans in check, that their lack of unity would make them easy to control. But now she saw the truth. Humanity was stronger than she had ever realized. Michael, with his calm leadership and unwavering resolve, had ignited a spark in the hearts of millions. The humans were beginning to believe in themselves, and that belief was their greatest weapon. The Aether might have superior technology and firepower, but they lacked what humans had in abundance: determination, creativity, and the will to fight for their freedom. The truth was clear now. The Aether were not the unstoppable force they had once believed themselves to be. Humanity had the power to change the course of this war, and no matter how powerful the Hithers seemed, they would never break the spirit of a people who refused to surrender. The tension was rising. Every day, more people joined the resistance, and every night, more sabotage missions were launched. Humanity, once thought weak and helpless, was proving the Aether wrong at every turn. But with every small victory came a larger threat. The Aether would not sit idly by while their empire was challenged. Michael and the resistance had been preparing for a strike, something bold and unexpected that would make the Aether realize the humans weren't just surviving. They were fighting back. They had spent weeks gathering intel, studying the alien technology they had captured, and planning their move. It wasn't just about winning small battles anymore. It was time for a counterstrike, a blow that would send a clear message to the invaders. "Tonight is the night," Michael said, as he looked over the plans spread out on the table. The team was ready. The mission was set. They were targeting their communications center in the middle of the desert, one of their key hubs for coordinating the invasion. If they could disable it, they could cripple the Hithers' ability to control their forces and communications. It wasn't a small task, but it was something that could turn the tide of the war. Sarah, one of the resistance leaders, glanced up at Michael. "Are we sure this will work? They'll be prepared for us." Michael nodded, his eyes hard with determination. "They've underestimated us. We've studied their patterns, their technology. We know their weaknesses." He wasn't just speaking to Sarah. He was speaking to the group as a whole. Each member of the resistance knew what was at stake. If they succeeded, it would be a major victory. But if they failed, it could mean the end of their fight. The night sky was clear as they moved out. The group was small but fierce, equipped with a mix of human-made weapons and salvaged Aether tech. They moved through the shadows, keeping low to avoid detection. Their objective was clear: get in, disable the communication center, and get out. Quietly, swiftly. As they neared the facility, Michael held up his hand, signaling for everyone to stop. He motioned toward the guards at the entrance of the compound. They had two options: sneak past them or take them out quietly. Michael chose the latter. In a smooth, coordinated move, the resistance team took down the guards without a sound. It was a precision strike, a testament to how far they had come since the first moments of defiance. They had learned the tactics of the enemy and used them against them. Each action was calculated, each step taken with purpose. They reached the communication center's control room without alerting any of the main forces. The alien equipment inside was massive, glowing with energy. Sarah moved to work on the controls, her hand steady as she hacked into the system. The countdown to disable the facility began. But as she worked, a warning light flashed on one of the consoles. They had triggered an alarm. "We've been spotted," Sarah shouted. Michael's heart raced, but he didn't hesitate. "We move now. We finish this." The team sprang into action, fighting their way out. The 8th Air Forces inside the compound were quick to respond, but the humans had the advantage of surprise. They used the knowledge they had gained from studying the alien technology to set traps and outmaneuver the attackers. As they made their way to the exit, Michael felt the ground shake. A massive explosion rang out. The communication center had gone down. The first blow had been struck. The Aether were no longer in control, and humanity had just shown them what they were up against. As they retreated into the shadows, Michael's heart swelled with pride. This wasn't just a victory. It was proof that humanity could fight back. They weren't just helpless beings waiting to be enslaved. They were warriors, and this was only the beginning. The explosion at the Aether Communications Center was felt across the world. News spread quickly. Humanity had struck a powerful blow. The aliens had lost their ability to coordinate, even if only temporarily, and that gave the resistance a chance to catch its breath. In the days that followed, Michael and his team worked tirelessly. They had made it clear to the Aether that humanity wasn't going to bow down. Now, they had to keep the momentum going. The victory in the desert had boosted their confidence. People from all corners of the earth were joining the resistance, eager to fight back and take control of their future. But as much as they celebrated their success, Michael knew they couldn't get comfortable. The Eighth Fair would retaliate, and their response would be brutal. He had seen how they crushed entire civilizations in the past, and he didn't believe humanity was any different in their eyes. Late one night, Michael sat with Sarah in their makeshift command center, a small, hidden building on the outskirts of what used to be Chicago. The rest of the team was resting, but Michael couldn't sleep. His mind raced with ideas and plans. The war wasn't over, it was just beginning. "We've made a dent in their operation, but we've only scratched the surface," Michael said, breaking the silence. Sarah, looking over the map of Earth's continents, nodded. "We need to keep up the pressure. If we wait too long, they'll rebuild everything we've destroyed." Michael stood up and paced around the room, his eyes scanning the map. "We need to hit them where it hurts, at their core. Their ships, their fleets. We need to attack their supply lines." Sarah looked at him, her brow furrowed. "How do you propose we do that? We don't have the firepower to take down their ships. They have weapons that we don't even understand." Michael stopped and turned to face her. "We don't need to destroy their ships. We just need to disrupt their control over them. If we can cut off their access to resources, their technology will crumble. They'll be unable to fight effectively." It was a risky move. Without the right tools or knowledge, taking on the Aether's advanced technology could backfire. But Michael was confident. He believed in the resilience of humanity, in their ability to adapt and learn quickly. "We have something they don't," Michael continued. "We have creativity. We have the ability to think outside the box. They think they can crush us with their power, but they don't understand our resourcefulness. We can outsmart them." Sarah smiled slightly, her confidence growing. "So what's the plan?" "We're going to hack their systems again. But this time, we need to go deeper. If we can infiltrate their main power grid, where their energy is stored, we'll force them to lose control of their fleets. Without energy, their ships won't move, their weapons won't fire." Sarah nodded, a fierce determination in her eyes. "We'll need a team. I'll gather the best hackers and fighters we have. This could be our chance to really turn the tables." As the days passed, the resistance worked in secrecy, preparing for their most daring mission yet. The humans had learned from their previous successes, and now they were ready to take the next step. But the Aether were not blind to the growing threat. Talira watched from her command center, furious at the humans' ability to adapt. She had underestimated them, and now she was determined to put an end to their resistance before it could grow any larger. The battle for Earth was far from over. Both sides were preparing for the next phase of the war, knowing that the tide had begun to turn. The outcome was uncertain, but one thing was clear: humanity was no longer on the defensive. They were ready to fight with everything they had. The plan was set. The resistance was ready. Michael stood at the front of the group, looking over the faces of the people who had become his family over the past few months. Their eyes were filled with determination, but there was also fear. Everyone knew this mission was dangerous. It wasn't just about sabotaging their equipment anymore. It was about taking the fight directly to the heart of their power. "We can do this," Michael said, his voice steady, though inside he felt the weight of the responsibility. "We've come this far. We've faced down their weapons, their technology, and their lies. Now we're going to hit them where it hurts, at their energy supply." The mission was clear: infiltrate the Aether's main power grid, located deep in the heart of a heavily guarded facility. If they could disable it, the aliens would lose control over their ships and weapons. Without their energy, the Aether would be crippled. But there were risks. The facility was heavily guarded, and the security systems were like nothing humanity had ever faced before. The slightest mistake could cost them everything. Yet Michael knew there was no turning back. If they didn't take action now, the Aether would rebuild, and the resistance would be crushed. As they prepared to leave, Sarah walked up to Michael, her expression serious. "You know this could be a one-way mission, right?" Michael looked at her, his face unreadable. "I know, but it's a risk we have to take." Sarah nodded, her jaw set. "We'll see this through, no matter what happens." The team boarded their transport, a makeshift vehicle cobbled together from parts of old human technology and alien technology they had salvaged. As they moved toward the target, Michael felt a familiar mixture of fear and excitement. The feeling of being on the edge, about to dive into the unknown, was both terrifying and exhilarating. The ride was long, and the closer they got to the facility, the more tense the atmosphere became. Everyone knew that once they reached the facility, there would be no turning back. There would be no second chances. "We're almost there," Michael said, breaking the silence. "Get ready." The facility came into view, a massive structure made of strange, dark materials that glowed faintly under the alien lights. Guards were stationed all around it, and energy shields surrounded the building. It was clear that the HFY knew how to protect their most valuable assets. Michael turned to his team. "Stick to the plan. We get in, we disable the power grid, and we get out. No heroics. We move fast. We move quiet." Sarah and the others nodded, checking their weapons and equipment one last time. They had trained for this moment, and now it was time to see if they could pull it off. They approached the outer perimeter, using the cover of night to hide their movements. Stealth was their best chance. They needed to get inside without alerting the guards, and then they would have only a few minutes to complete the mission before reinforcements arrived. As they made their way inside the facility, Michael's heart was pounding in his chest. They had done everything to prepare for this, but nothing could truly prepare them for the unknown. The walls were lined with strange alien technology, glowing with energy. The air felt thick with power. They reached the control room, and Sarah quickly began working on the alien system. "We're in," she whispered. "Just a few more seconds." Suddenly, the sound of footsteps echoed through the hall. Guards were getting closer. "Move," Michael hissed, his voice low but urgent. They had to finish the job now. The countdown began. As Sarah typed furiously at the console, Michael and the others took defensive positions. They were close, so close to taking down the HFY's power grid. But they had no idea how much time they had before the alarm would go off, and the entire facility would be swarming with enemies. With a final press of a button, Sarah hit the key that would disable the grid. But at that exact moment, the alarm blared throughout the facility, sending a chill down Michael's spine. It was too late. The mission had been a success, but now the real battle was about to begin. The alarm blared through the facility, its harsh sound echoing in the corridors. Michael's heart raced as he and his team scrambled into action. The mission was a success. They had disabled the HFY power grid, but now they were trapped inside one of the most secure alien facilities on Earth. "Move, move," Michael shouted, signaling the group to fall back toward the exit. They had no time to waste. The HFY would be coming, and they would come fast. They had to get out before reinforcements arrived. Sarah was already pulling out a small device from her bag, working to disable the facility's security systems. "We don't have much time," she said, her hands shaking slightly but her focus clear. "I can slow down their reinforcements, but it won't be enough to stop them for long." "We'll make it enough," Michael said firmly. "We've come this far. We can't turn back now." As they moved through the narrow hallways, the sound of HFY soldiers rushing to their positions grew louder. The team knew they couldn't afford to be caught in the open. Every corner was a potential ambush. They needed to move quickly and carefully. They reached a junction where the hallway split in two directions. Michael paused for a moment, his eyes scanning the path ahead. He could hear the faint footsteps of alien soldiers behind them, getting closer by the second. "Left or right?" Sarah asked, her voice tight with urgency. Michael didn't hesitate. "Right. Go." They turned and sprinted down the corridor, hoping it would lead to an exit. The facility was a maze of dark hallways, But Michael trusted his instincts. The power grid was down, but the HFY still had control of the facility's security systems. Every second they spent inside was a second they risked being surrounded. Suddenly, the lights flickered and went out completely. The entire facility was now in darkness. "Keep moving," Michael commanded, his voice low but steady. "We're almost there." The team ran through the pitch-black hallways, using the dim glow of their weapons' lights to guide them. It was harder to see, but it also gave them an advantage. The HFY soldiers would be disoriented too. But their advantage was brief. The sound of gunfire rang out from behind them, followed by the hiss of alien energy weapons. The HFY had found them. "Take cover," Michael shouted. The team dove behind a row of metal crates, using them as shields. They returned fire, but the alien weapons were powerful. The HFY soldiers were well-trained and well-armed, and they weren't going to give up easily. Michael peeked around the corner, his eyes scanning for any movement. The soldiers were advancing, their guns raised. He had to act fast. They couldn't win a fight here. The mission had been their victory, but if they stayed, it would become their tomb. "Sarah, the exit. Can you open it?" Michael called out. "I'm trying," she yelled back, tapping rapidly on a portable device that was connected to the facility systems. The sound of alien boots pounding on the floor grew louder. The HFY were getting closer, closing in on them. There wasn't much time left. Just as the first alien soldier rounded the corner, Sarah let out a breath of relief. "Done. The exit is open." Michael didn't wait. He shot a quick look at his team and then signaled to move. "Go. Now." They sprinted toward the exit, guns raised, their hearts pounding in their chests. As they reached the door, a barrage of alien energy blasts whizzed past them. One of the shots grazed Sarah's arm, but she kept running, determined not to slow down. The door slid open, and they poured out into the cold night air. Behind them, the facility erupted in chaos as the HFY soldiers scrambled to regroup. Michael's team didn't stop. They ran as fast as they could, heading toward their extraction point. The mission was far from over, but they had made it out alive. The power grid was down. The HFY had been dealt a serious blow. But as they raced toward safety, Michael knew that the war was far from finished. The HFY would come after them with everything they had. The next fight would be the toughest yet. But for now, they had won. And that victory was enough to fuel their determination to keep fighting. The days that followed their escape were filled with tension and uncertainty. Michael and his team had dealt a heavy blow to the HFY, but they knew that the aliens would retaliate soon. The HFY didn't take defeat lightly, and they would use everything in their power to crush the human resistance. The resistance was regrouping, making plans for the next move. Their victory in disabling the HFY's power grid had given them hope, but they also knew the HFY were not weak. Their forces were still overwhelming, and they had advanced technology that humanity had only begun to understand. Michael stood in the makeshift command center, surrounded by maps and plans. His eyes were tired, but there was a fire in them that hadn't died out. He had seen humanity rise from the ashes, and he wasn't about to let it fall back into darkness. The battle wasn't over, not by a long shot. "We need to keep pushing," Michael said, looking around at the group of resistance leaders gathered around the table. "The HFY will come after us. They'll regroup, and they'll strike hard. We need to be ready." Sarah nodded. "We've made progress, but we need more allies. The more people we can bring into this fight, the stronger we'll be." "Agreed," Michael said. "But we also need to strike before they do. We can't wait for them to find us. We need to take the fight to them." The resistance had been using guerrilla tactics, small strikes, sabotage, and surprise attacks. But the HFY were getting smarter, adapting to their methods. They had to come up with something bigger, something that would force the HFY to think twice. "We've already hit their power grid," Sarah said, tapping a map. "Next, we need to target their supply lines. If we can cut off their resources, their fleets won't be able to move. We need to find a way to cut off their access to the materials they use to fuel their ships and weapons. Michael's mind raced as he studied the map. The HFY's supply lines were scattered across the globe, but there was one key location, a massive mining facility in the mountains, a place where they harvested rare minerals for their ships and weapons. If they could disable that facility, it would cripple the HFY's ability to wage war. It's risky, Michael said, his voice heavy with the weight of the decision. But if we can take down that facility, we could set the HFY back for months. The room fell silent. The risk was enormous. The facility was well protected, and it would be heavily guarded. But Michael knew this was their best chance. They had to strike while the HFY were still reeling from the loss of their power grid. "Let's do it," Sarah said, breaking the silence. "We've come this far. We can't back down now." Michael nodded, his resolve strengthening. "All right. We move out in 24 hours. Get the team ready. We're going to hit them hard." The next day, the resistance team assembled, ready for another mission. The journey to the mining facility was long, and the closer they got, the more dangerous it became. They knew they would be walking straight into enemy territory, and there was no turning back. As they approached the mountains, Michael's thoughts turned to the future. The HFY were powerful, but humanity had something they didn't: hope, unity, and a will to fight for their survival. And as long as they had that, they would never give up. They were about to make another strike. The HFY wouldn't know what hit them.